Hi everyone, this video is going to introduce you to the concept of methods in Java. Here we have an initial class called methods example, and it has its opening and closing curly braces that declare the class block. And inside of it we have our main block as well, with no code inside of it. What I'm going to show you how to do now is how to make your own blocks and how to make the main block interact with them. So I'm going to copy and paste in a separate block right now. And its name is the say hello block. To compare the two blocks, notice that I did not put the say hello block inside of the main block. They're actually two separate blocks. The second thing is you should notice that a lot of the initial keywords are the same: public static, void, void. We'll talk about some of those keywords later. For right now, all our methods will have those. Then comes the name of the method. There's main here. This one's called say hello. Then finally is a parenthesis that opens and closes with either something in it like the main block or nothing like our new say hello block. We'll talk more about what goes in the parentheses later. Finally, there's this open and close curly brace, which defines where the method information begins and ends in terms of execution for code. And then inside of it is the code that actually will be executed. So now that we have this new block, let's see what it does. I'm going to compile it, and then I'm going to run my file, and well, that wasn't very exciting. I expected it to say a bunch of different ways to say hello in English, German, and Spanish. The issue is that when you make a block, Java doesn't automatically execute it. To get a block to be executed, you actually have to tell Java that you want to execute it, because the order in which blocks execute will affect how your program runs. Kind of like with Legos blocks, the order in which you connect them together can make different shapes, different objects. So what we're going to have to do is go to the main block, which is where your Java program actually begins, and tell Java that we'd like to execute the say hello block. And to do so, we just type in the name of the block, and then open close parentheses, and then a semicolon. If we then compile and run our project, very excitingly, we see the three ways to say hello in English, German, and Spanish. Now we can have as many of these blocks as we like. I'm going to take another block now and put it into my project. This one's the say goodbye block. Once again, notice I didn't put it inside the say hello block. It's a separate block. So it's very important to make sure that you're seeing where you're putting code, so you don't try to put a block within a block. And then if I would like to say goodbye, in the main block I can type in say goodbye with parentheses and then a semicolon. And now it says both. So what's happening here is when we say hello, the main block essentially jumps in code to the say hello block, and it starts executing code here one line at a time. And when it gets to the end of the say hello block, it goes back to where the program had called say hello from, which is right here, and then it goes to the next code line to execute, which is say goodbye. So then there's another jump to the next method, executes its print statements, and then when it's done executing them, it jumps back to the main method, and since there's no more code to execute, the program stops. So the order in which you execute these blocks matters. If you switch them around, now as you would suspect, it's going to say the goodbye commands, followed up by the say hello commands. One final block that I'm going to copy here is the say both block. And the interesting thing about the say both block is it looks very similar to what the main block does. In fact, I'm going to delete what's in the main block right now. Instead, I'm going to call this say both method. And so now what happens is if I compile and run my project, first you have to make sure you don't have syntax errors, so spell say goodbye correctly. And then when you run it, it'll still say hello and then goodbye, but the order in which things happen becomes a little bit more complex. It starts in the main method, jumps to say both, and then in say both, it calls say hello. So it goes and does the say hello code. After it's done saying hello, it goes back to say both, does the next command in say both, which is say goodbye, goes and does what's in say goodbye, and then when someone say goodbye, it goes back to say both. Now that say both is done, it goes back to main, and because there's nothing else to execute, it stops. So that's an introduction to methods in Java, and hopefully this made a lot of sense.